Welcome to today's broadcast of North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of NIC television students, and your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
Our subject today is sports, and we have a very specific issue that we wish to talk about concerning that major area. Our guest today is John Owen, who is the coach of the North Idaho College wrestling team, and we don't do too many programs about our own institution, but we're very proud of the fact that John has brought another national championship to our institution. As a matter of fact, our wrestling team at North Idaho College since 1974 has won 9 national titles. I compare them with the UCLA basketball team of the 1960s and 70s. Let me give you the background of our coach and the success of our team. John Owen, since he's been in that position, North Idaho College has had a team with a record of 202 wins, 8 losses, and 1 tie. He has coached 64 All-Americans. He has coached 20 national champions. He has won 7 individual national team titles, and the coach prior to him won the other 2. Coach Owen's teams won the National Junior College Athletic Association Championships in 1978, 82, 85, 86, 87, 88, and now this year, 1990. He has won 13 Region 18 titles, which include several Northwest states. He has also been the National Junior College Coach of the Year 3 times, 1978, 1982, and 1985. He has also been National Junior Pan Am Freestyle Coach, and that year was 1979. He is a member of the Junior College Coaches Hall of Fame. He is also past Secretary-Treasurer of the National Junior College Coaches Association. He has a master's in education and in education administration from the University of Idaho. He also has a master's of education from Whitworth College. Our guest likes to stay busy. Coach, welcome to our program. We congratulate you again on bringing another championship to our institution and the state of Idaho.
Thanks, Tony.
As always, I'm very happy to have regular panelists on our program. To my immediate left is Janelle Burke, who is an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is regular panelist Steve Shink, who is Dean of College Relations and Development. And introducing Steve, I know that he smiles broadly as head of Public Relations at North Idaho College with our guest today. I shall ask Janelle to commence the questioning.
It's very exciting to have an opportunity to talk with you today. Can you tell us a little bit, for the benefit of our viewers, what your background was before you became a coach? We've heard of your outstanding record. What happened to bring you to that point? When did you become a coach, and how did you become a coach?
Janelle, I think probably poverty drove me to being a coach, possibly. No, I was, I think first of all, is I became a teacher, and then secondly became a coach. And I think I came from a large family, a little background. I had 9 brothers and sisters, and I always tell everybody you get kind of used to sharing things all the time and giving things up whether you wanted to or not. And I think it became kind of a natural thing as I went through school. Entering school like everybody else is what do I want to be, what do I want to become, and it just seemed like a natural thing. When I was in high school athletics, it just I found the sport of wrestling and found it something that was probably more natural for me than anything else, and I like the closeness of it, and I think you're always reaching out and touching somebody or pushing somebody and grabbing somebody, and we have 9 brothers and sisters at home and you're trying to eat dinner, you're doing a lot of that too, so I think it just kind of fit for me. It was a natural thing. I had a coach in high school, like a lot of young athletes, that had a tremendous impact on me, and his name was Jug Beck. He's still the coach at Missoula Sentinel High School in Missoula, and at the time we were winning. I was in the process of being in a program that won 10 consecutive state championships. So, and I think that had an impact on me. And I went to college and found that was something that it was of interest to me. And being able to take basic skills like wrestling and to share them with somebody else, and then get some immediate feedback seemed natural. Started teaching in Oregon. Right away, I got very fortunate to get a head coaching job at a school called South Umpqua High School in Myrtle Creek, Oregon. And as a usual small school, it had 6 disciplines. Teaching history, I think I had 6 preps my first year, and I'll never forget it. And then was coaching football, finished coaching football, went into wrestling coaching, from there into coaching track, and just found that I liked wrestling better. And I think it was just because of the close proximity you were to everybody and being able to mold them and grab them and control them in an individualized sport like that, and that it just stuck with me. And then, I don't know, good or bad, it's been there ever since. So,
Steve Sheen.
John, there's so many aspects of this season and your career that we could talk about, but I'm going to guess that there are members of your team who are watching this show, and I don't want you to have to go back and explain to them why you didn't mention their name. So maybe you could take just a minute and run down the team for us and tell us a little bit about the order of finish at the national tournament.
Well, thanks, Steve, for keeping me on track, and I think that's a good reminder too. Obviously, the success of any team, this being 1990, and not looking back, there has to be some outstanding individuals involved in that. And to go through our lineup, at 118 pounds, we had Pat Edelblut, and Pat is from Rathdrum, Idaho, and Pat had a third-place finish, an exciting third-place finish in the national tournament. And at 126 pounds, we had Ernie Molina. He is from Winslow, Arizona, and Ernie wound up 4th in the national tournament, gained a lot of team points, made our team right before the national tournament started when another kid didn't make weight, stepped in and really did a great job for us. Then we had a national champion at 134 pounds. His name is Sam Parker. We had another national champion at 142 pounds, John Sainert, and John was our only returning All-American from the year before. He'd placed 3rd as a freshman, and again this year was a national champion. So that was the only really returning solid person we had there. Although Sam Parker at 134 was a national champion for us 2 years prior to that.
I don't believe, John, that you tell us where those two last wrestlers were from. Their home.
Sam is from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and John is from Chicago, Illinois. Barrington, that's probably closer. At 150 pounds, we had Alfonso Laws from Spokane, Washington. Alfonso wound up 2nd in the national tournament. And at 158 pounds, we have Mike Scott. He was a national champion from Pomeroy, Washington. And then we go all the way to 190 pounds as our next entry in the national tournament. His name was Jamie Camberling, and Jamie is from Lisbon, Iowa. And Jamie wound up 7th in the national tournament. And our heavyweight was Todd Goodwin, and Todd's from Melville, Melville, New Jersey. I better get that right because he's bigger than I am. And he wound up 4th in the nation. So what we felt good about, Steve, is that we took 8 people to the national tournament in Bismarck, North Dakota, and placed all 8 of them. And I don't know why, but that was our very best tournament of the year. We overachieved or whatever, but we reached a tremendous peak physically and mentally in the national tournament in Bismarck. We hadn't approached that performance all year long, and I don't know why, because it would have been a lot easier to have those kind of performances more often than we did this year. But nevertheless, it was a tremendous team effort, and we lost the first day of the tournament, which included 4 rounds of wrestling. We dropped only 2 matches the entire day, and the second day we dropped 6 more, so that's 8 total. When you wrestle that well as a team, you're just not going to lose too many national titles.
John, if my memory serves me correctly, this may be the first year in my 5 years at North Idaho College when your team wasn't picked going into the season as a favorite to win the national championship. And I believe you only were ranked number 1 within days of the start of the national tournament. So you built all season long. Is that?
Yeah, that might be a good point, Steve. We started off 3rd, and we had a early showdown with the defending national champions, the 1989 national champions, and the Las Vegas Invitational. That was Lincoln College out of Lincoln, Illinois, and we beat them badly in a dual meet. It was like 30-13, something like that, and we wrestled well. And then that vaulted us to 2nd in the nation. And, so I think preseason we were the 3rd or 5th. And we were probably, that was a good rate. We were the 2nd best team, the number 1 ranked team in the country all year long. Just prior to the national tournament was Garden City from Kansas, and they returned 3 national champions, and that's like 3 aces in your deck, and you just should not lose a national title with 3 national champions. We've had that kind of firepower before in 1986 and 1987, and we just totally dominated a national tournament with that kind of personnel. and they did not wrestle a bad national tournament. I talked to their coach afterwards, which I thought was the #1 ranked team, and he said, we wrestled a good national tournament. So you guys wrestled a great national tournament. I think that explained it more than anything else. He was not disappointed, but I think he was a little bit. But we just really, getting 4 finalists was an overachievement on our part. We just had people really pull it out.
What was the final margin of victory, John?
Oh, it was over 20 points. I think it was like 20 a quarter. We locked up the national title prior to the finals, and I was told that before. Did you think that helped those people wrestle in the finals because we won 3 out of 4 final matches? I don't know. There's maybe a tendency to have a letdown. I don't know if that was important. I didn't even mention it to them, but I'm sure their teammates did. They say, hey, we got that gold in our pocket. We're going to take it home to Idaho with us. But we didn't talk about that. I just explained to them, each one of them, the importance that most people are satisfied with winding up in the finals of a national tournament. I know I would be, and I think they all are, but you need to go above and beyond. I told them they have the rest of their lives to remember that the way they competed that night and don't get cheated, and they didn't.
John, I want to take advantage of the fact that you've been so successful to talk about maybe why does success come and some rather philosophical questions. And in giving this impressive record, I failed to mention that the years that you did not win the national title, you still placed a lot of those 2nd or 3rd or 4th. So you've been in there almost every year. You and I have had some wonderful conversations one-on-one about a lot of these issues. And I wish you'd share with our viewers, and particularly young people who be watching that are involved in athletics or desire for a career in whatever field it may be, what is success made of? And I know that's a very difficult question, but what causes some people to succeed or even go far beyond the expectations others have, whereas someone else who may have equal or even greater ability doesn't have the same success? What is the strength in an individual? And you certainly have coached a lot of those people.
It's and I think we've talked about it, Tony. It's a tough question. I think just to stay on a very basic level for the viewing audience, so everybody understands. I think their work habits, both for coaches and athletes, are a very important thing. And obviously, the second thing is sacrifice. You have to make tremendous commitments to certain things, and I think you have to give up a lot of things that are available to you in order to accomplish one thing. And I think maybe it takes a single-minded person that's able to shut out everything else, and it becomes almost an obsession. National titles to coaches as well as athletes become obsessions, and I think we need to put that in perspective along the way. But at the same time, I think the 2 things, Tony, that I think set the good, assuming that everybody has a certain amount of natural ability, but sets it apart, is probably work habits, and then just a commitment and shutting everything else out and sticking with that one thing.
Your recommendation can apply to other fields. Some of our great musicians, some of our great writers, some of our great artists put in tremendous hours and throughout their lifetime, and they have a very clear goal in mind, do they not?
I think so, and then obviously that third factor everybody talks about is certainly luck, and I've been lucky. It's been on my side a lot of the times, Tony. You've been here all these years, so you can remember that we've been one match away from winning a couple of those national titles. And in 1978, the very first national title we won, our 142-pounder won in the finals, and if he won, we were the national champions. If he lost, we were second. I think he won by a point or two. And in 1982, we won a national title with a heavyweight in the very last match of the evening. If we won the national title. If we lost, we were second. We won that in the last 7 seconds. Sometimes there's got to be a little luck involved, and I think it's went our way more times than it's not.
But as a coach, it's a lot better like it was this year, where you can relax. That's very difficult on blood pressure to go down to that final match. And so I have one final question. We'll go on to Janelle. And I'm not taking away from this team. It was just a great honor. But you've had teams where you had so many returning experienced individuals and champions already nationally.
Exactly.
And as Steve has already alluded to, this team was not expected to win the nationals. What kind of ingredient did they have? Because they did achieve beyond what was expected.
The maturity, I think, was one big factor, Tony. This year we had about 4 athletes. I think we had 4 people that had been in our school for 3 years. And had redshirted a couple of them because of injuries, a couple of them because they felt that they needed to graduate from a junior college before moving on because of the Prop 42 rule now, so that you graduate or you can't go on to a Division I school. So we had a couple of those people, had a couple of people that stayed back because they were injured. So we had 4 20-year-olds on our team, one of them 21-year-old. It makes a difference. And I think that because of that, they were able to handle that pressure of a national competition. They were very relaxed. And I think the second thing that I felt real strongly about is all year long, whether the performance was where we wanted to be or less, we were able to. They kept working hard in the room, the practice room, and we always say we have twice as many practices as we do matches. So putting an emphasis on practice time becomes a real critical thing. It pays off in the end, and this year it did. It's kind of funny. You never can get a firm grasp of why they performed that well on that weekend. If we could do that, duplicate that effort all the time, it'd be a lot funner. But nevertheless, it was a surprising national title and a very gratifying one. And I feel that because of this team, we had 4 people that were in the finals of the national tournament, and 3 of them, the highest they'd ever placed in a state tournament was second. So that in itself, we feel that North Idaho College, both education and wrestling-wise, would have benefited. They benefited greatly from the school, and so it helps them out, and hopefully they get transferred onto a 4-year school and continue that success.
Thank you. Janelle Bird.
Could you kind of take us through a year? I know a coach's life is probably pretty cyclical. Could you take us kind of through a year? You recruit. What are you looking for in the recruits then as you begin to practice? What are you doing? What kind of inspirational talks do you give the students when they win and when they lose? Kind of what do you work for to peak at the right time? Can you give us some kind of an idea how your year goes?
Well, we start our season the day school starts. We start a running and lifting program in September, all of September. October 1st, we start on the mat. There's been some new rule changes now. You can't start practice this next year until October 15th, and so that'll put it back a couple weeks, but that'll be no problem. And we start our competitive season, and we drill the entire month of October. We practice. November 1st, we start competition. We have weekend competition as well as some midweek competition through February. And our national tournament is usually at the very end of February, and it fluctuates 1 week up and 1 week back. At the end of that season, then, you usually have a couple months of intensive recruiting, and we recruit nationally as well as locally. And most of our recruiting is done by mail and telephone. I make very few home visits because of budget restrictions, but we do have visitations here. And what you're looking at is there's always a large turnover in junior college. You turn your team over twice as fast as you do a 4-year school, and that's probably the most demanding thing there is to the job. And it's the thing that makes it difficult is doing it year after year, is finding that energy to keep doing it, because the first time you don't do it, you're in trouble. And you need to have a good year every year in junior college recruiting. 4-year school, you can have a bad year and make up for it. You can't do that at this level. And we'll work at it real hard until April, and at the same time we'll have our people involved in some freestyle at this time of the year. They take a month off, and then we'll start back, and we'll work out a couple of days a week in the evenings, an hour and a half, and then the off days will be involved with study table during that time.
Can you tell us a little bit, too, about how you determine weights? I know that weight is very important. What do you do to make sure that your wrestlers make weight? How do you work on those kinds of things so that people are at the right weights?
Yeah. It's just a discipline thing. It's a personal discipline thing with each person. They first of all determine the weight they're going to wrestle, and then they have a responsibility to make that weight. We have a nutritionist as well as a former coach that's really involved with that. His name is Bill Pekka. He's on the campus. He's been a valuable tool for all of us, and he sets up diet programs for them that they follow, and then it's a matter of, like anything else, taking sugars and fats out of your diet, and of course the amount of energy they put out each day in the practice room running and lifting. Their calorie output is so high compared to their calorie intake that once you get them down to weight, and you're talking maybe the perfect percentage is probably right around 5-6% body fat, which is fairly lean. They're almost able to maintain that and eat a great deal just because of the amount of workout time. You're talking 3-4 hours a day. And then they dehydrate their liquids prior to making weight to make it.
Steve Sheen.
John, before I forget, I want to add my congratulations to Tony's and to the rest of the college and our community. You chuckled, which is typically John Owen, when Tony mentioned your teams in the same breath with the great teams from UCLA. But this is truly one of the great sports dynasties in the history of American athletics. As you mentioned in your comments, with a 2-year school, you're dealing with a very different group of athletes every year. The one common denominator year in and year out through all those national championships and all those winning seasons has been John Owen, and it's clearly the reason why this program has been so successful. And I think there are a lot of people out there who are wondering what's in John Owen's future. I know that there are frustrations in coaching, and it's a huge time commitment. What do you see ahead for you?
It's a tough thing, Steve. I think that everybody probably battles with it. The biggest problem that I have is trying to struggle with the balance between a young family like I have and coaching. And I like this time of year. This is a busy time of year. It was like Janet, my wife, laughed when somebody said, "Well, what does he do now that the season's over?" She said, "You actually put more time in to it now than you do during the season." But the thing that's so nice about this time is you can control your time. I mean, I don't have to be in the gym at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock at night. And for 6, 7 months or 8 months out of the year, I have to be there. And if my children are involved in something, then I can be a part of that. And I think we all struggle, but at the same time, there's people that are, I'm very fortunate to be in the position I am and maybe, hopefully, make some career choices. Right now, I think that any time that you finish a season, there's a certain amount of you're tired. You want to make career decisions based on a lot of positive things around you, and your attitude and feelings are real important. And I think I'm going to sit back for the next 2 or 3 or 4 weeks and look at my future and look at some career opportunities that may be out there, and then make a decision.
John, you mentioned a nutritionist on the team, and I want to clarify that for people. Bill Peck is actually a chemistry instructor at North Idaho College who volunteers his time.
That's correct.
And we're lucky to have him, as we're lucky to have you. You might want to take just a minute to mention some of the other people who work with you in the program.
I'd like to do that, Steve. Bill Peck is obviously a big factor. He was the original coach at North Idaho College. He started the program, and he is an excellent coach. Bill has a strong background in high school wrestling from Illinois, and had wrestled briefly at Iowa State University, attended Iowa, and it's all voluntary. It has been for all the years. He's a major part of our recruiting. He runs the Tri-State tournament. He involves himself in fundraisers. And you don't have a program like North Idaho College without a Bill Peck on our team. We just have people like that we're involved in. Also, Tony would mention we need to look at, when I took over this program, I took over a great program. I still maintain that I'm just maintaining this program, and that's won national titles before I took it over, and I just can say we're still doing that. And so I inherited a great situation. Bill Peck, needs to have credit. He had a program well on, he was the head coach for a couple of years, had it off the ground, going well. Les Hogan came in, was here for 4 years, won 2 national titles with it in 1974 and 1975. And it's been going ever since. And now we had a young assistant this year. His name was Pat Whitcomb, and the joke was he was one of the Michigan people came up and said, "We heard you were in trouble and you brought Pat Whitcomb in at Christmas time to straighten you out." And that's what we did. Pat was at Western Montana College and got a chance to do his student teaching out at Coeur d'Alene High School in January. And Pat, for the record, was a former 2-time national champion for us and the only outstanding wrestler I've ever coached. And a great team person, and just works well with young people. We brought him in, and he did make a difference. He just excites people, and he's extremely dedicated and intense and a good teacher. And so we brought him in, and he was obviously a big part of that final drive. And if you're looking for reasons, that's got to be one of them.
Real quickly, John, Tony mentioned at the beginning of the show that I smile when you're introduced because you are a tremendous source of positive publicity for North Idaho College. One of my disappointments is the perception of wrestling as a minor sport compared with basketball and football that gets so much attention is that you don't get the attention you deserve. What do you see ahead in the future of wrestling in the junior college ranks and in NCAA ranks nationally?
But you know, it's really funny, Steve. I think being a former wrestler like yourself, and being from the area you're from, wrestling in the East Coast is extremely popular right now. I have a reporter friend that could not get into the New Jersey State Tournament last year because they sent their passes in late. So in some areas it's really going well. In the Midwest, it's always went well. In the West Coast, it's not doing very well right now. Although sometimes wrestling is just a lack of publicity. Very few people realize that the GSL draws as well in wrestling as they do in basketball because it doesn't make the papers. That hurts us a little bit. We have a tremendous advantage in Coeur d'Alene in the fact that North Iowa College draws well from the media. We have good coverage both from the Spoken Review, from the Coeur d'Alene Press, and KVNI Radio have been great to us. And that helps us here, but at the same time it has not helped the crowds. And I think that, you know, in some areas like in Oklahoma and in Iowa where you have a lot of grandfathers, a lot of fathers that have wrestled before, they're kind of on their second, third, fourth generation of wrestling. Out here, I think one of the things that hurts us the most is just the lack of education about the sport of wrestling. And so they don't understand how to watch it. And I think that'll change. If we can just hang on and those people that wrestle now become dads and the cheerleaders become moms, then we're going to see they're going to grow up understanding the sport and the beauty of it, and I think become fans of it. And that's one of the things that has been, no secret to me, a frustration is the fact that we have a quality program like North Iowa College. We can have consistently one of the top-ranked junior colleges in the country and perform in front of small crowds.
John, we're just about out of time, but your sport's not had to face some of the problems that others, as basketball and football, where there's so much money involved, not only for the institution, but players being taken away by the pros early, and there's been a lot of scandals around this whole thing, and gifts to players and so forth. That's because those are the ones that go on and have such a major national organization. But could you quickly react to that? And would you propose reforms for that problem for the collegiate sports?
Well, you know, that's such a, you know, I guess I always tell somebody I'd love to have enough money sometimes to cheat. But, you know, I think what you're seeing is that, you know, sport today is big business. And I've always said that I think that, you know, that a lot of it's been exposed, you know, through media sources about some of the negatives about athletics, about amateur sport. And I just feel that you know, there's only so much we can do as coaches in this sport. I think if a kid's a pretty good kid, he's going to continue to be a pretty good kid. But if he's having problems and you put him in sport of any kind, I think those problems will continue. I think we are as people like anybody else.
I'm so sorry to have to close out our program. I got the signal that it's time is up, and I want to thank you. And again, I want to congratulate you on behalf of the panel and our staff. And I know I can speak for all of our supporters here. That you've done a wonderful job. Not only have you been successful as a winning coach, but the ethics that you've used is so important, and you want the students to do well and go on with their careers. We congratulate you for that as much as for the winning.
Thank you, Tony.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest has been John Owen, who is the coach of the 1990 National Junior College Athletic Association wrestling team from North Iowa College. We hope you've enjoyed our program and that you'll be with us again next week at this same time. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at the same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by an NIC student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.